Okay, it's almost booted up. All right, looks like we are live. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So, biggest Leaf fan in the world. Maple Leafs, Toronto Leaf, Maple Leafs. Awesome. So, guys, tonight's topic is games abusers play. And so, the reason I want to go over this is because when I was growing up, I had a lot of different power struggles and everything that ended up happening, and there were different mind games and techniques that the abuser I grew up with ended up playing. And so sometimes what ends up happening is there's certain events that end up happening in my current day-to-day life that ends up triggering on some of those old memories and responses and stuff. Hey, Saeed, good to see you. And so what'll end up happening is you end up having a reaction of something that is similar that's going on in your day-to-day life that ends up triggering this um, uh, I don't want to say like an overreactive response, but it's kind of like the kind of response that you're having for what's going on in today's life, and what's happening today, is over the top for what is going on right now. And other people might be looking at you, might be thinking, like, what's your problem? Why can't you get over this? Like, why can't you, break through this? Why can't you, like, just calm down? Like, what's going on? And you may even be finding that about yourself, and you're like, what the heck is my problem? Like, why am I reacting so strongly to this? There's definite reasons as to why you're having these kind of reactions. And so we're going to dive deep into that. I'm going to share some of my examples. Hey, Kat, go ahead and ask your question. So I'm going to share some of my examples of what I've been through, some of the things that I've experienced, and then I'm going to correlate that to how something can happen in today that is similar, that brings up those reactions, and then what you can do with that and how to be aware of it so that you don't end up self destructing. And that can be pretty challenging because when some of these reactions come up, it can feel like you need to respond in some sort of way. And there's a whole spectrum of things that we're going to cover with this. So, just before we dive into that, I wanted to see if Kat has asked her question. I'm just scrolling through here. I'm not seeing a question, Kat, so I don't know if it's muted it or if you've typed it out yet or not, but I'll try to keep an eye on it. So thank you for tapping the screen and sharing the live. We're going to dive into this. So one of the things that had happened, and this is a little bit more of a milder situation, but the abuser that I grew up with that was sexually abusing me, and when I wasn't cooperating and I wasn't doing what he wanted me to do, and I wasn't giving in, and I was just being mean, and well, he called me mean. It was me setting a boundary, going, no, don't fucking touch me, even though I'm a child. But what ended up happening is there'd be abuse that would happen that was subtle enough that other people wouldn't notice that this abuse was happening to me. And it was always put back on me with how I reacted to how I was being treated. So there was enough plausible deniability so that I would be the one that was looked at as reacting badly. And so he would do little things to reassert his power. And one of those things was um, controlling dinner time and the food that was being ate. So he knew that I absolutely could not stand eating mackerel. It's a fish, and it's a little bit more of a greasy fish. It's a little bit really fishy smelling, and it's kind of like turkey. It's got this white meat, dark meat kind of thing. And so when that actually happened, he would make sure, as a way of punishing me, that he was craving mackerel. So my mom would cook him mackerel, and he knew that I wouldn't want to eat it. And I knew he was doing that just to get me to have to sit there and eat it. And he knew, and he would look at me across from the dinner table because I had to sit straight across from him, and he would just smile and he would gloat while he was doing this. And I absolutely, and I'm like maybe grade three or so, I absolutely refused to. Oh, I see your question now, Kat, and we're going to get to that. I'm wondering, how can I be more social person? I am naturally introverted. Okay. Um, we're going to dive into that a little bit, okay, on how I started to become more social. So I will stick around, Kat. Hopefully, you can stick around for a little bit. I'm just going to finish this piece of the story up, and then I'll jump back to your question. Is that okay? So, um, so he would do this deliberately, and it was a power struggle. So I would actually end up refusing to actually eat, and so what he would do is he had to up the ante because I wasn't reacting in the way that he wanted to. So he wanted me to, and he was taking delight in knowing that it bothered me. And so these are the kind of mind games that would get played with me. And it's not, I didn't even realize that they were mind games. I just thought I was being a bad kid, that I was being a bad daughter, that I was being stubborn. And my mom and my brother, they would kind of gang up. It's like, it's not that bad. Why don't you just eat that? And it's like, but part of me knew it was, he wasn't doing it just because he wanted that. He wanted to do it because he knew it would upset me, that I wouldn't like it. And so those are the kinds of fucking mind games that he would play. And I didn't realize when I went through therapy the first time the level of that kind of abuse and how that ended up happening. And then layer on the compounding damage. It's bad enough that your caregiver plays those kind of games with you, but then also getting the people around you that are who you believe to be your true support system, and they turn people that are supposed to be your support, people you actually care about. See, he knew that he couldn't actually get to me because I didn't give a fuck what he thought. And he knew that. And the problem was is he would turn the people that I actually cared about against me, and he would, get my mom and my brother to join in on beating up on me, that there's something wrong with me, that I didn't want to eat this fish. And then to add insult to injury, what he would do is he would wrap it up and he would serve it to me the next night, that I absolutely had to eat it, or I wouldn't get any of the my favorite dish, which was like steak and baked potatoes and salad. And it was like, and I had to watch them, the rest of my family, eat my favorite food in front of me while I sat there and stared at this cold, nasty fish from the night before. And there weren't microwaves back then. Nobody had microwaves, only the rich people did. So those are the kinds of things. I wasn't even able to warm it up. And guess what? I still didn't fucking eat that fish. And I waited until that fish would go bad before I would actually eat it. That is the kind of stubbornness that and willfulness I had to tap into, that kind of strength, because when you were dealing with that kind of malicious narcissism and that kind of power struggle, um, that really kind of affected me. And I didn't realize that So there are times where I feel if somebody is being overly domineering, overly controlling, then that stubborn side will actually come out in me. And I'm not sure if it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. There's been times where um, there can be situations where I feel like I'm being overly controlled, and maybe people are doing it out of goodness and kindness and support and stuff like that. Maybe it's a teacher and they expect me to follow certain rules, and I am being rebellious against it. You have to go, okay, Kat. What I'll do is I'll do up a training on that. So if you come back tomorrow night, we can go over that, okay? Um, and I will touch on it, and I will be uploading this to YouTube so you can go through that, okay? Um, so, so those are the kinds of things that would end up happening. And so when I feel that response coming up in me, and it's a current thing that's going on in today, I have to take a step back, and I have to, first of all, recognize that the reaction I am having is extreme emotion wise based on what's going on today. And so when I at least recognize that, what I need to do is understand the emotions that are there. And then I need to, so if it is anger, if it is resentment, if it is rage, and if it's rage, that is like uncontrollable hurt. So if you have that kind of response come up into you and you just feel this rage and you feel like your blood's boiling and you just want to lash back out, make sure that you halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sick. Any of those five things, if you are in that emotional state, you're going to want to halt. You're going to want to pause. You're going to want to buy yourself some time so that you don't react badly. Now, there's a spectrum to this. Now, so in some of my more extreme reactions, when I feel that overly controlled piece, what will end up happening is suicidal thoughts will come up. I have images that'll come up. I have images of a knife against my wrist and stuff like that. And it's like when those things come up, I have to breathe. I have to tell myself I'm not going to act on those. And I have to tell myself that this is going to pass. I need to find something more productive to do. I have all this excess energy, this excess anger, this rage, and I need a way to actually burn it off. So that could be done through, for me, exercising or getting out and doing something physical. It could be rage cleaning. It could be snapping a cat's neck. No, I'm just kidding. I could vent about different things. I may have to vent about, call up a friend to just bitch about something, and I maybe need to vent something out. If I don't have that, then I can vent through journaling. I can vent through screaming, yelling. So you can go into like a car wash and you could just like scream out that rage, whatever it is that you need to do to get this excess energy out. And know that some of this, 20% is the trigger from what's happening today, 80% of it is past experiences. During this time, you're also going to want to pay attention to the thoughts that you're saying in your own mind. These are really good clues as to what's going on for you, and um, learning how to combat those voices, because a lot of times, especially if they're negative and critical voices of like, you're never going to get through this, you always screw this up, you can't do anything right, blah, 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 whatever it is that is going on in your mind, I can promise you that is coming from a past person that was in authority over you, that was overly critical of you, and you are taking up and you are taking over where your abusers have left off. Hey, hey, Anita. So paying attention to what is going on there is really important, and you're going to want to learn to find that there's different coping mechanisms that you can go through, and depending on your emotion level and how badly you're in this triggered mode, getting yourself to that calmer state is going to be important. So, knowing a spectrum of kind of like, okay, you know what, maybe on the low end of the spectrum of destructive coping mechanisms might be, you know what, I got into the chocolate, or I ate some foods that I went off my program and it's not the best choice, but it was a hell of a lot better than going to the drawer and grabbing a knife to act out the images that I was seeing in my mind. So it's kind of like that's a spectrum. Those are both self destructive behaviors, and getting into the chocolate might be a problem if I'm trying to lose weight or I'm trying to focus on a program. So it's self destructive, but there is a spectrum of self destructive. Okay. So acting on suicidal thoughts would be the other extreme, and you definitely don't want to go there. And having tools and coping strategies in place is going to be very, very important in order for you to mitigate the damage that is happening when you're having one of these triggered responses. Okay, so number one is dealing with the emotion and bringing that emotion down to a calmer level so that you can focus and think a little bit more clearly. So, if you're having a lot of excess energy and you've got to deal with that. So finding ways to burn that off. So if it's physical activity, it might be working out, it might be screaming. Now, don't go screaming at other people, don't go screaming at your kids. Um, I got a little bit snippy with the cats, but I didn't scream at them. I told them, I told them, that, I idly threatened them, stuff like that. Um, but, you know, obviously it's not directed at them. So, and they can sense energy still. So it's funny when I get in those states, it's like they start acting up even more to test me. And that is also a cue that I take a look at. If the cats are acting out of whack, then that is my cue that I need to lower my energy and stay a little bit more calm. So it's kind of like my one cat, Katie, she'll come over to me and she'll like gently pat my arm. It's like, or like she'll want up. And it's like that, when I see that happening, it's like that's a signal for me. And I instantly actually calm down because I know she's trying to come over to comfort me. And it's like, it's really sweet actually that she knows that I'm upset. And but then some of the other cats, they'll also do things. It's like, so when I get in those states, becoming aware of how is it that you react? How did you react in the past, and how are you reacting now? What kind of things amplify that reaction, and what kind of things de-escalate that action? So the amplification might be something, all of a sudden, for me, one of my triggers is I become hypersensitive to noise. It's like I can hear a raccoon fart 20 miles away and I find it aggravating, right? So that's just kind of a jokey example, but it's like all of a sudden my cat will decide that it's bath time, and it's like making licking noises, and it's just like, oh, cringe. Uh, okay, breathe. And it's like all of this stuff just kind of compounds and piles on to really agitate that trigger. And it's just like, oh, fuck, come on. So it's like, it's a matter of when all of that stuff happening, and when I see a bunch of those things happen, I just start to burst out laughing because it's like, okay, I give up, I surrender. Obviously the universe is trying to trigger the shit out of me here somehow, some way. There's something I got to learn from it. So now when I see a bunch of those things happening, I actually just laugh at myself because I know that right now, in this present moment, I am not in danger. However, my body is reacting as if I was back in the past. And so it's a matter of getting yourself to this more integrated position where you are realizing that you are not in danger like you were in the past, and it's calming yourself down, controlling your breathing, grounding yourself. And I have grounding exercises that I work with of bringing my senses back into play. I might get a little bit more belligerent because in the past I couldn't speak up. So I might, if I'm feeling that frustration of just like, you know what, fuck you, fuck off, I've had enough, bullshit, fuck this, all that kind of stuff. Get a little bit on the Tourette side. I sound like a demented chicken sometimes. Fuck off! And so I'll do something like that and just kind of going with it and just allowing yourself to do some things that maybe you couldn't do before in the past, allowing yourself those emotions so that you actually feel it and process it, and not try to repress it. Now, you are not allowed to harm other people. So do this in a way that is safe. You're not allowed to harm other people or other animals or damage property, any of those kind of things. Because when I get in some of those states, what I really, really want to do, and I'll have these visualizations of just trashing and breaking furniture and smashing the walls, and I don't act on that. So I get a cookie for those kind of things of the fact that I didn't act on that. But when you are feeling that stuff in the moment, it can be really, really powerful. And when you haven't had training on how to mitigate those things, sometimes we end up acting on those things. And then that compounds the damage. And that is when we end up slipping into some of our destructive coping mechanisms. Know that there's still coping mechanisms, but there are better ways to deal with that so that you don't end up having more damage to clean up. And then you end up feeling guilty because now you've done all these additional things. So, building yourself a tool belt of more constructive ways to deal with those emotions that come up. It's not the emotions that are wrong, they're not bad. You're allowed to feel those feelings and you're allowed to process through those and get yourself to the other side of it by, first of all, accepting that that is how you're feeling, learning different tools on how to deal with those emotions in a way that is helpful instead of destructive to you is ways that is important for you to learn how to do that through your healing journey of different things, and accepting where you're at and accepting if maybe you did slip into your some of your destructive coping mechanisms. With one, I got into the chocolate, and 10, I took an attempt on my life. That you want to know the spectrum of destructive coping mechanisms. And if you did fall into those, have kindness and compassion and care for yourself so that, okay, maybe I went to, you know what, I went out and I got hammered and I went back to drugs or whatever it is that you are your more destructive coping mechanisms, and how did you respond with that? Thank you, Appleton. You're a positive teacher. Thank you. So being kind with yourself and looking at it, it's like, okay, I maybe didn't, maybe the next day you kind of go, shit, yeah, I really blew that one up. I lost my temper. I shouted at my kids. I, told my boss to go fuck himself and I lost my job. Whatever it is that ended up having this bad reaction, have kindness and compassion. Understand what happened. It's important to look at it, not heap more abuse and more criticism on yourself. Um, Look at, okay, what were the things leading up to it that caused me to react that way? Where in my past have I reacted like this? Where in my past have similar circumstances that caused me to feel like I had no other choice? than to react that way, because that's what it feels like in that moment when you are feeling these intense feelings and you don't realize what's going on is you're being triggered, and it's not just what's happening today, it's all of this stuff and all those similar things that have happened from the past that are all coming up and they're all coming in to play in today. And then we end up reacting really badly today. And that reaffirms a belief that we had from the past. And that solidifies it. And we think that's who we are. And that is the furthest thing from the truth of who we truly are at our core. When we are doing that, when we are in our destructive coping mechanisms, that is us crying out for love. We're crying out for support. We're crying out for, it is fear, false evidence appearing real. And what we need in that particular moment is we need love, we need kindness, we need compassion, we need patience. And learning to be that for ourselves is so important. And I know it's not fair that we were treated that way, because if you are having any of these extreme reactions in this moment, it is because you were not treated properly in the past. And you have unprocessed emotions from that that are causing you to respond in this particular, or react in this particular way. When you are aware of that and you can make those connections, that is the first step. Awareness of, like, oh, okay, this reaction that I'm having right now, this isn't just from today. This is over the top. This seems a little bit much for what's going on right now. And you may even logically in your mind be thinking, why is this such a problem for me? I know normally this isn't a problem. Why can't I seem to do things I know I am actually capable of doing? What the hell is going on? And we feel like sometimes we're not in this driver's seat. And we may start to think, well, I guess this is just who I am. I guess this is true, right? Of I can't do the things, right? And sometimes it's called, people will label this as self-destructive behavior, and you're self-sabotaging. And I'm like, no, you are not fucking self-sabotaging. You are actually triggered from something that has gone on in the past, and you need to be able to look at what is going on there and make that connection, because what is going on is it's that child part of you that is reacting to what has gone on in the past, and you feel out of control. So because you feel out of control, you now start to act out of control. Okay? And then you start to believe that I must be somebody who's just out of control. I'm somebody who loses their temper all the time. I am somebody who's just, that's just the way I am. I can't change it. That is bullshit. Okay? That is absolute bullshit. And you can change these things, and you can look at these things, and you can do this stuff if you are willing to do the inner work. And the problem is we end up causing so many problems for ourselves in our lives because of our reactions to things. And then we wonder why certain people don't connect with us in certain ways, or they, if you step on the toes of others, I can promise you they will retaliate. And not many people have done the inner work, so most people are going to react, and they'll react even when you haven't done shit to them. They will, you can say hello, good morning, and they'll be like, fuck you. And you'll be like, what the hell, man? And if you've done that inner work and you know that you're in a good space, you can see that their reaction actually has nothing to do with you. And it has everything to do with what's going on with them. How do I know this? Is because I can be completely by myself and have a shit day, and nobody else is around. It's just me and my party. And that kind of stuff can happen, and that's okay. Okay? It's okay to sit with yourself as you're going through these things. What I want you to know is you are not crazy, that these are just reactions, and learning to manage these reactions and learning to understand where they're coming from, what's going on, and how to move through these things in a very short period of time. Because this stuff was happening to me today, I reacted. I was trying to do things to keep myself. Sometimes I kind of veered off into the more destructive, but I was like destructive at a level one, too. Got into the chocolate, got into pizza, got into a couple of different things, and I'm like, I'm mad at myself for those kind of things, but it's not at the extreme. So I also did things like tried to focus on taking those next step forward. What do I need to do in my work and all those kind of things, and then dealing with the emotions and understanding the shame, the anger, the guilt, all of this, because it doesn't come at you clear either, too. So learning how to sort through those emotions and understand what's really going on is so important. And I've been through these things a million times. I deal with these things and how to deal with this on a daily basis, because as you're going through this process, these things will come up in different ways, okay? And this is part of your growth journey. And you may go along and think, hey, you know what? I got that one sorted out. I know how to handle it. And now you're at a new level and there's new things that you're dealing with, or new circumstances, or a change in your life, or a change in your job, change in your relationship, any of those kind of things. Change in family, a death in the family, a birth, you know, change will trigger these things to come up in you. And you might be like, where the hell is this coming from? And maybe you're like, oh, I can't be feeling like this. This is crazy. And you try to shove it away, and you try to ignore it, and you try to avoid it. And I promise you, you will end up having to deal with these sooner or later. So, learning how to build yourself constructive tools, understanding how to trace these things back, how to understand where they're coming from, and then how to move through them in a way that is much faster, so that you can deal with this in a couple of hours without destroying your fucking life in the process, and or at least mitigating the damage as the storms come up. And know that they're supposed to come up. And just because they're coming up doesn't mean that things are going wrong. It's actually a good sign when these things happen, because now they're coming up and out. It's you are ready to heal these things. When you have them repressed in your system, this will cause health issues. This will cause all kinds of problems for you. And you will be acting out and doing things in subtle ways where you think you have a lid on it, but it's just a pressure cooker waiting to explode. Okay, so you may think that you have that on lockdown, you have it all sealed in, but the heat keeps coming, and then next thing you know, kaboom, and the pressure cooker blows on you, right? Because you weren't paying attention. So understanding what to do, even if you have a pressure cooker situation, on how to mitigate and move through that in a way without destroying yourself and those around you, is so important. And these are things that I help with. And I know I kind of missed this in the intro, but if I see there's some new people that have joined in, welcome. If this is your first time joining me, my name is Tina, and I am a happiness coach. And I actually help people move through these challenging emotions, whether that's depression. I can promise you, if you're feeling depression, that is anger that gets turned inwards. That is anger that should have been vocalized outward. And what we end up doing is we turn that inward. And one of the problems is why people don't like to deal with the depression is because in order for you to deal with that depression, you actually have to externalize that anger, and then you think and you feel like you're getting worse in the process. It's like, I don't want to turn into this friggin' rageaholic abusive person that I grew up with. What the hell? Like, that's not good. I don't want to feel like this. And that's part of the reason why we turn that anger inward on ourselves. And that's why we feel depressed, is because we are trying so desperately not to be like that abusive caregiver, parent, uh, teacher, friend, coworker, partner, whatever it is. We are trying so desperately not to be like one of them that we end up turning this in on ourselves, and we don't have any way to healthily express our anger, our fears, our anxieties, our emotions that were not allowed previously. So the first step is understanding what those emotions are, acknowledging those emotions, accepting those emotions, and learning new healthy tools on how to communicate those emotions, how to feel those emotions and process through those. These are things that I help with as a happiness coach. So I do come on here every day to share my experience, my strength, my hope, and situations that I've been through to help deal with those things. And my hope is that you are able to pick up something that you can apply to your life today to start helping deal with those emotions and avoid those damaging self-destructive coping mechanisms that we all um, if we don't know how to deal with this properly, we will develop those self-destructive coping mechanisms, and where they seem like a solution in the beginning, actually those solutions end up becoming a problem. Okay? So, guys, now I know I'm going to tack this on, and hopefully Kat will come back on tomorrow. But she did ask a question, so I want to address this so that if you guys want to catch the live replays, you can go over to my YouTube channel, which is Coach Tina B 125. And I do upload the live videos. I got caught up on the live videos. I think I uploaded 3 or 4 of them today. So I was a little bit behind, but I got those uploaded, and you can check those out. And you will also see copies of my artwork. So artwork that this stuff is for sale, by the way, guys. So if there's any that you see in the background that you do like, and you're interested in purchasing those, you can message me, and I can set that up to get that shipped to you if you want one of those. Or you can click on the link because all the YouTube thumbnails have copies of the artwork and links to Redbubble, where you can, if you wanted a phone case, you wanted a notebook, you wanted a skirt or a t-shirt or whatever. They've got shower curtains, bed spreads, all kinds of different things that you can order. But you check those out, click on the link, Redbubble, and then you can order those directly. And that helps me be able to support the channel, be able to continue to provide free coaching for everyone. So if those who cannot afford my one-on-one coaching, that they can at least still continue to receive the training that I give every day. Okay, so guys, go check that out, my YouTube channel, Coach Tina B, and at the very least, go check that out and subscribe. That'll help me. It's a free way to help and show some energy and reciprocation. Okay, so back to Kat's question, which was she's more of an introvert, and how can she start to be more social? So, number one is being around people that are more socially supportive. of you, right? So joining a group where there's a common activity. So something that you enjoy. So that could be anything from sci-fi to a chess club to painting. It could be there's online ones that you can get to. Maybe you're not as comfortable um, being in person, depending on where you're at with your introversion. I know I tend to be more introverted. And I had to, especially in the beginning, I had a lot of anxiety when it goes to being out in physical presence with people. And that had to do with having to deal with the feelings of shame that I had to work through. And the thing with shame is shame gets its power in secrecy. Shame cannot live. It's kind of like, it's almost like black mold, right? If you expose it to UV sunlight, it will die. It cannot live. Um, so exposing shame and bringing that out and being able to talk about the shame that you feel for whatever it is. And that can be all through the spectrum. There's people who carry shame and they've shared their stuff with me, and I'm like, okay, um, to me, that's not that big a deal. To them, it was the whole world. And it doesn't matter whether or not somebody else thinks it's a big deal or not. If you feel shame about something, then and you're not able to speak that out, this is something that you're too afraid to actually talk about, that will cripple you. It will cripple you. And that keeps a lot of people stuck in this belief that they are introverts. And it is really shame that is holding you back. And when you get around right people, you get around people who actually support you, who actually care about you, who actually love you, and allow you the space to be you, I can promise you, you will not be an introvert. You get a bunch of people that are labeled quiet and mousy and timid and shy and blah, 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 but they have a common interest together that they all feel comfortable talking about. I can promise you, you would look at that group, and nobody would think that they're introverts because they're all animated, they're all talking. It's all about something that they actually love and they feel safe to actually open up. So human beings by nature are not introverts. We are naturally connected. So if you are not able to connect, I would suggest at some level there is, whether that is other people or you internally are not feeling like you can open up. You do not feel safe to be who you truly are. So what happens is people shut down, become quiet, they sit back, they don't participate because maybe they got made fun of in the past, maybe they were ridiculed, maybe you were bullied, maybe you just like to listen and you're fascinated by the conversation, and that's okay. Um, for me, I know I get a lot of energy by being by myself. I like to recharge. I get overwhelmed if there's too much noise. So I know that about myself and I respect that. It doesn't mean I can't socialize. I can now. But before, in the beginning, when it was really, really hard and I had a lot of anxiety, and people would invite me to different social events and I would cancel, but by about the third time that I'd cancel, I would feel guilty. The guilt would kick in, and so I would be afraid that they'd stop asking me, so then I would force myself to go, and I hated that. And when I, like this one backyard barbecue that I went to, I remember walking up the driveway and I was so full of anxiety and fear and shame, and I didn't even know how to label those emotions back then. All I knew is it just felt like walking up that driveway was like trying to run through water with a pair of lead bricks on my feet. And it just felt that heavy, and I all I wanted to do was turn around, jump in the car and go home. That's how I literally felt. I did not want to go out. It was that debilitating for me back then. And I made it to the backyard gate, and I was seriously thinking of just turning around and going back, but somebody saw me and they're like, "Hey, Gina's here." And I'm like, "Fuck. Oh, no." Okay. So then I put on the smile and I was like, "Hey, everybody, how's it going? Oh, yeah, I'm here." And I just wanted to crawl into a shell and die. That's how I felt back then. But I forced myself to participate, and and I found one person that I could actually talk to that I felt safe with. And I expressed to them, I expressed the things that I was actually feeling. And I said, this was actually really, really hard for me. And this is how I was feeling. And this is how felt coming up the driveway. And this was really challenging. And instead of ridiculed, I got support. I got support by somebody saying, "Wow, it was that hard for you and you still did it. I'm so proud of you. That's really brave. Look at you. Like, take a minute and celebrate that you actually did this. I'm so friggin' proud of you." And that made me feel like $1,000,000. It really did. And I had never really had experienced that. And giving yourself praise for doing things that are hard for you is so important. And it doesn't matter if it's the easiest thing and everybody else, it's like, well, why don't you give yourself praise for breathing? Because that's the kind of family I would have grown up with. It's like you weren't allowed to give yourself praise, even if you jumped over the moon and you, like, it's like, oh, who do you think you are, kind of thing, right? So learning to give yourself praise for things that you find difficult. It doesn't matter if everybody else finds it as the easiest thing in the world. But if you found it difficult and you were able to do it and you were able to push through it, then I want you to know that you have my permission to celebrate that. Okay? So, whatever it is, find what it is that you'd be comfortable with in being able to take that next step in becoming more social. So that might mean, you know what, I'm going to come on here on TikTok and ask a question. That took bravery. That took courage to be able to ask that question. And so give yourself credit for just even asking that question. Maybe you could also go to a group. Maybe it's an online one. Maybe it's a Zoom one. And if there isn't one, maybe you could start one and say, hey, a bunch of your friends. And you know what? I don't like to go out and socialize, but hey, can we just hop on a Zoom call and hang out for 20 minutes, half hour, 10 minutes, whatever? Do a video call. Whatever it is that next step for you to feel more comfortable being social. Okay? Take it in smaller steps and you get to decide, well, what's this thing that I'm going to try to push myself to be a little bit more comfortable? Because I can't give that to you. I'm at a different space in my journey. But I shared some of my story of where I was at when it was very, very challenging for me to be social. And now I don't beat myself up if I don't want to be social. Before I used to, because I felt like I had to. Now I'm like, no, I don't want to be social. And I don't know if it's my age or if it's perimenopause or I just don't give a shit anymore. I don't know what it is. It doesn't really matter. But I'm okay with being me now. And I give myself permission. So if I feel like being social, I will be social. And if I am trying to do a stretch exercise, I will do that and I will push myself to do that. But I get to decide, not somebody else. And that is something that is so important. And that is something that's empowering. You get to decide how fast, how slow you get to grow, what is comfortable for you, and I promise you, if you keep moving in a direction that you want to grow, and you keep stretching yourself week after week, day after day, whatever it is that you're working on, that you will look back and go, wow, look how far I've come. Because at one time, I was the girl who had trouble walking up the driveway just to go have a backyard barbecue. And here I am now doing live videos on Facebook and TikTok and uploading them to YouTube. And I am sharing the stuff that I've gone through. And some of the stuff that I've shared on these videos are really difficult. And I am being open and honest because I now don't carry that shame that those events used to hold over me. Why? Because I'm able to speak them out. I'm able to speak the truth and shine light on them, that they no longer hold those emotional power over me like they used to. Doesn't mean that I can't get triggered from time to time, because let me tell you, it still happens. But I know how to use, I have tools in my tool belt. I know how to use them. I know how to move myself through them. I'm like, I know what's going on here. This is what I need to do. This is how I need to move through this. And my stretch thing has been since, I think it was, I started doing these lives December 31st, and I've been on every day. Maybe not always on time, but I've been on every day that I've come on here and I've done a live and I've done a training. I've shared my experience. I've shared my strength and hope of what I've done. And you're sensitive and you're having trouble. Sensitive in what way, Gypsy woman? Like physical sensations or emotionally sensitive? Can you give me some context? If you feel comfortable doing that, of course. So, so guys, yeah. So this is one of the things that I wanted to share, because a lot of times some of these reactions that we have, going back to the original topic of the games that abusers play, and knowing that those reactions that I had, were because I had no other options. However, those decisions that I made as a child, and based on the choices I had in those particular moments, knowing that when I get triggered from something going on today, that those are not the same things going on that were in the past, and letting myself know that I am safe, that I'm okay, that I do have control. The adult part of me can take care of that child part of me that is scared and reacting, thinking that, oh no, it's happening again, when it's not. Maybe there's similarities, but it's kind of like, okay, when I get the emotional child part of me calm down, then I can deal with the situation at hand logically, calmly, objectively, like an adult who has been healed and actually has done the inner work, instead of reacting and hurting people around me. So that is what I wanted to share today, guys, and I hope you found that helpful. Um, I will be posting this video on my YouTube channel, Coach Tina B 125. Check that out, and I will be back on again tomorrow, to help answer any questions. So, Gypsy Woman, I didn't see a response, so I'm not sure if you're still here, but you're welcome to come back on again tomorrow and ask the question, and I can go over that with training. Okay? Thanks, guys. I hope you have a great night. We'll talk to you later. Bye.